Hey, this is Steffen Rachut for PokerVIP.com, and in today's video I want to talk to you about stress. Now, poker can at times be a very stressful game. You have the variance involved, or you're experiencing downswings, and if you happen to be a professional poker player or someone who makes a living from poker, of course poker can be very stressful in general because you always have the pressure of playing a lot of hours and also of course to make a certain income, right? So in this video I want to kind of give you a rundown what stress actually is, and then in the second part of course I'm going to give you a couple of pointers, tips and techniques that you can use both when playing poker and in your day-to-day life that will help you reduce the stress that you're experiencing. But before I do that, I really want to mention that, in my work with professional poker players, I really noticed that stress is very, very common, and it's really important for you as a player to learn to manage stress well, not only because your game is going to suffer, but stress can have a very detrimental effect on your personal life, which then again is very likely to spill over into your poker game. So first of all, you really got to understand what stress actually is, because many people, they have a false understanding of what stress is. And in the mainstream media there is this this picture or this concept of stress whereby people are overwhelmed by the workload. For example, people often say they're stressed when they have more to do than they can cope with, or there's a lot of things going on in their lives, which of course is one important component. However, the first thing that is important to realize is that stress is very, individual, in the sense that we people, everyone perceives stress very differently. What that means basically is that for one person, this may be a stressful situation, while another person may totally not feel stressed at all. So the first takeaway here really is it's not necessarily the amount of work, for example, or the number of things that are going on in your life right now that make you feel stressed. Now, of course, there are a couple of universal stressors. This is really the differentiation, right? There are stressors that are external stressful events basically that are stressful for you, and then there's stress, and stress is really your individual experience of these stressors, but I'll get to that in just a second. So what I mean by that is there are a couple of things that are stressful to basically everyone, right? If we have more work, for example, or if we have to play more hours than we actually can, this is something that can be stressful. If we have financial pressure, that is usually something that is very universal, that is stressful to everyone. However, for example, when we take the work example, some people, they feel stressed when they have to work 8 hours a day, or they have a very stressful job. Now, there are a lot of entrepreneurs, I know that from firsthand experience, that can work 12 to 14 hours a day, well, which I don't really recommend. However, they are not really that stressed, right? They thrive in this environment. And the important part here really is this. Every person perceives the external stressors differently. What that means is really there's a very, very strong psychological component to it. So you can visualize it like this, right? There are a couple of various stressors, and then in the middle there's you, with your psychological predispositions, with your life experience, with basically the way you perceive the world. And at the other end there's the reaction, right? How do you react to it? How do you cope with it? And sometimes the stressor, for some people, they evaluate it in a way that at the end of the day they are really stressed. They feel stressed physically and mentally, whereby the same stressor could be evaluated very differently for another person. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look at the things that really stress you, right? The things that you think are stressful to you, and then try to figure out what it is about that, about the event, about the situation, about a person, whatever it is that stresses you. what is it about this situation or event that is actually stressful to you? Because usually there is, in psychology, we call this cognitive appraisal, which is really just terminology for how we evaluate this situation. So basically, you got to find out what it is, how you evaluate this, that makes you feel stressed at the end of the day. And you'll be surprised at what comes up for this, because there's usually, a belief or fear is often involved. Almost always there's deep down, there's some kind of fear that basically drives the evaluation of that stressor. So the first big takeaway here is that there's always a big psychological component to it, and you really want to find out what that is for you personally, because that's going to allow you to work on that. And then maybe when you may be able to resolve it, and the same stressor that you previously perceived as really stressful is not that stressful anymore. Now, the second thing that's really important here is that there is, next to psychological stress, of course, there's also physiological stress. That means the stress that accumulates in your body. And whenever we feel stressed, there's a physiological response going on in our body that makes us feel the way we feel. And this is actually very, very harmful, not only for your health, but also for your capacity to think clearly, right? I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but basically what happens is the stress hormones that are secreted whenever we feel stressed, they have a negative effect on our brain. And basically what happens then is we're not able to think clearly anymore. We're not able to make very good decisions at the poker table. And worse even, when you leave the poker table, the stress response is still active, and you may be unable to fall asleep, or you may feel really irritated. So there's really a host of negative ramifications of stress, right? This is why it's so important. This is why stress can be so universal in our lives, right? So the next thing that I want to tackle is really, what can you do against stress, right? So stress is a really, really complex topic, and there are thousands of methodologies of how you deal with stress. So I'll keep it really simple and basically give you a rundown of what I believe are the most important things to keep in mind here. So first of all, we feel stressed when we perceive that we're not able to cope with this situation anymore, right? So it's really, we're basically, every time something happens to us, we're evaluating for us internally whether we can cope with this situation or not. So you want to find out what that is, and then you want to make sure that you have a lot of coping mechanisms in place that will help you deal with this situation better. Now, the easiest way really is to create a very balanced lifestyle. Meaning you want to have phases in which you are performing, in which, stress is coming to you, because just playing poker is stress in a way, right? You won't be able to tell me otherwise, right? There's always, in the back of our mind, there's running a program that is evaluating things, how things are going at the table for you, and there will always be some level of stress involved. So you really need to make sure that you have the right balance between stress and rest on the other hand, right? I know this is hard to understand because people don't think that poker is physically taxing. However, it drains you mentally. It also drains you physically if you're playing long hours, and it can be very draining emotionally. So what you gotta do is you gotta make sure that you have the right balance between playing and recovery, right? And this may vary from person to person. You gotta make sure that you're doing stuff where you're physically active. You got to make sure that you get a lot of sleep. I know these sound really simple, but these are at the core of managing stress properly. If you make sure that your recovery phases are as intense as the stress phases, then you'll be in a balance, right? Then your body will be balanced, your hormonal level will be balanced, and you will be able to perform well again, right? So a couple of examples here would be, exercise, sleep, the two most important things. Diet can be really important, right? The healthier you live, basically, and the better stuff you fuel your body with, Now, the better will your body be able to withstand stress, both psychologically and physiologically. So then you could find some routines really that help you calm down after a session, which I believe is really important. This could be yoga, meditation. The biofeedback is something that's really cool and that you can very nicely use to reduce stress, right? You got to figure out what's working best for you, basically. All right, so on to some more practical tips. 2 things that I believe are really important in general to keep your stress levels at bay is the way you start and end your day. The reason for this is pretty simple. Whenever you start your day, most people, what do they do? They go check their phones, their emails, they switch on their laptop or their computer, and they bombard their system immediately with information. Now, your body basically has 2 parts when it comes to your nervous system. And it's really important to understand this because basically whenever we're in front of a computer or when we're chatting or messaging someone, listening to music, there's, that one part of our nervous system is being activated. And this is normal, right? When we breathe in, for example, we are getting ready for action. Then this one part of our nervous system is being activated. Now, the important part here is that you want to have a balance between activation and, disengagement, right? You have another part of your nervous system that is basically there for you to relax, right? You can basically visualize it like this. The one part is there for you to activate your body so that you get stuff done, right? And the other part is there for you to calm down, to relax your body. And in the world we live in, right, we're always bombarded with stuff. We're watching stuff, we're listening to music, we're always on the phone, on the laptop. And basically all the time, the one part of the nervous system is being activated. And this is, at the end of the day, to put it simple, this is the way stress, is evoked in your body. And you want to make sure that you have a good balance. So one tip that I always give to my clients basically is that they start the day in the way that they have control over their agenda, meaning they have control over the goals they have for the day, right? So maybe you want to play a couple of hours of poker, you want to educate yourself a little bit, you have a couple of things that on your to-do list, so to speak, right? So in my opinion, it's really helpful if you start the day in silence, right? Don't bombard yourself with, stimulate your body with laptop or phone or anything. And I know this is difficult because we've all become so habituated to doing this, right? Start your day in the way that you have complete control over what's going on. Because if the first thing that you do is check your phone, for example, you will be likely to start your day on someone else's agenda, right? You're checking emails, you're replying to text messages, and all of a sudden you get so caught up in what other people want from you rather than pursuing your own goals, right? So make sure that, 15 minutes after getting up, these 15 minutes, make them sacred. Make sure that you do stuff that's relaxing or just don't do anything. Get a coffee or tea, whatever you prefer, and then just, sit. And after that, you could make a little plan of what you want to do during the day. And, the next tip really that I could give you is to put away like a couple of sequences throughout the day, maybe an hour or maximum 2, of where you get the stuff done that's most important for you. If it's playing poker, then have a couple of slots of 90 minutes or 2 hours where you play poker. Again, switch off everything else, focus on that thing, and then make sure that you take lots of breaks, right? Remember, you want to have a balance between stress and rest. And during those breaks, don't go on your phone, don't stimulate your system again. Do something that's really calming you down so that you can make sure that you go back to the table fresh, right? So, and then finish the day in a similar manner that you started the day, right? Sleep is super important. And in order to get a good night's sleep, you must make sure that you have a routine in place that allows your body and your mind to wind down. And this can vary from person to person, right? Again, my recommendation to you is stop watching movies or being on the phone at least half an hour, preferably an hour before going to bed, and then do something where you don't stimulate your system anymore. Read something, do some yoga, meditation, or just talk to a friend or your significant other, something like that, right? Or read a book. something that doesn't basically stimulate your system again. So you want to make sure that you start your day the way you want to start it. Make sure that you have a clear vision of what you want to achieve throughout the day. And then also make sure that when you are, in the process of achieving this, that you're not interrupted, right? And then at the end of the day, make sure that you get the proper rest, that you have a phase where you can wind down. These are really the most basic recommendations that I give to every poker player that approaches me on this subject. All right, this is it from me today. I hope this was helpful. Please leave some comments in the comment section. You can also ask me some questions. And also, if you have a topic, something that's really important to you that you would like to see covered in the future, also please leave them in the comments. So that's it from me. Until next time, bye.